So some of the relevant information pertaining to what the NSA had prior to 9/11 consists of communications that they've sniffed and stored and analyzed in some way. Was the NSA aware, or did it have in its databases the traffic that would have told us this attack is going to happen, and if so, what are the details?
Yes, although I don't see Tom Drake, who is a friend of mine, also a supporter of our program, ran that program on the entire NSA database after 9/11, several months afterward, and he found all the data that was necessary to stop 9/11 in their database sitting there that people didn't recognize or bring to anybody's attention or report in any form to anybody of authority. What that meant was that it got back to the unreliability of analysts being able to see through mounds of data. Right, you make them dysfunctional by putting all that data on top of them and making them sift through it. And so they first of all, it's only humans can only do so much, and obviously there was just too much there for them to handle. That's why they needed an automated process going through it, and they didn't have that. They rejected that entire process. That's getting back to why I keep saying they traded the security of everybody in the United States and the free world for money, because they wanted to. Money was the issue, not solving the problem.
So potentially NSA could have connected the dots prior to 9/11, stopped the terrorists from ever infiltrating the country, but they didn't have enough budget money, or they didn't focus that budget money on the appropriate projects. Which do you think it is?
Actually, it had nothing to do with the budget. They had plenty of a budget to do it. They didn't need any more money to make that happen. See, that was the issue. The issue was they wanted to build the budget up. So they wanted more money. So you don't do anything that would take away the problem that you're using to get more money. So you stop that and keep the problem going is the issue, right? So you still have a problem, therefore I need more money, so you get a bigger budget. If they say, well, let's implement this other program that solved the problem, well, then they don't have that problem to argue for money. So, and that's basically the way they viewed it and the way they operated, and then a lot of contractors got rich off of it.
Did you ever brief the CIA on what the NSA had on these terrorists prior to 9/11? So you would have briefed them after 9/11 and said, hey, here's what we had and here's what could have been known. Did that ever go on?
You see, I left NSA in October of 2001, so any of the data that was run and pulled out by Tom Drake, he did after I left. So I couldn't brief CIA on that, but what I did do with Ed Loomis and Kirk Wiebe, we went through open source data in 2002 and pulled together all the material that was there, including the names of the targets of the terrorists. They had names for the targets, like the towers, the Twin Towers were called Town Center. The Capitol building was called Law, and the White House was called Fine Arts. And so they talked about these. These were the codes they used for the targets in emails and things that they had said. And we got this out of open source off the web using Google. So we did brief them on what we were able to pull out of open source, and that was as contractors. We were going in saying, this is what you can do with open source. And we went through that, and I say, how did you ever know all that? And I said, it's right there in open source, you can get it too, So yes, we did brief them on that, but it was from open source material, not from anything that NSA had.
That's good to clarify. That's just good to clarify that it was from open source material. It was widely available. Right. Let me ask this specific question. Within that data set that was widely, openly available, was the attack date of September 11th, 2001 in that correspondence to be found?
Yes, it was, yeah. In fact, the way they depicted it as a, we say 9/11, 9th month, 11th day, but they'll say day month. So they would put a line and a line, and then a pi, a circle and a line. That would be 11/9. So the 11th day of September. That was mentioned as one of the date for the event.
What was the response of the CIA when you demonstrated this ability from open source data?
They just couldn't believe that we got that information out of open source. They couldn't believe that it was there. That's all.
Did the FBI have access to that data as well?
At the time, I don't think at the time they did. I mean, NSA had that kind of information, so they didn't share that kind of data, which they, of course, should. I mean, if that kind of information came to me when I was in the SIGINT Automation Research Center, if they didn't want to report it, I would pick up the gray phone, which is the encrypted phone for the U.S. government, and call somebody at CIA or FBI and say, here's what I have, take action on it, will you? I can't seem to get it out of my place. You know, they don't want to report this, but here's what it is. I mean, you do those kinds of things when those kinds of important things. You don't care what your management says because this is just too important. You do those kinds of things. But there's very few people there. Most NSA employees would say, okay, we won't do that.
I asked about the FBI because they are in the unique position of being law enforcement and intelligence. And so a lot of times they sit in the middle and seem to play both sides of that identity game.
Yes, they do, yeah.